You ever have one of those moments where your life just turns into a joke you weren't in on? Yeah, that was me. It started with a plumber. Not in the fun, sitcom way where the guy shows up, fixes the sink, and leaves. No, this was more like, hey, why does the plumber know my wife better than I do? But I'm getting ahead of myself. See, I'm Thomas, 39, father of a 7-year-old human tornado named Jake, and up until very recently, proud husband to Karen. I say proud because that's what you're supposed to say, right? But in reality, Karen was more like a coworker I happened to share a bed with. Our marriage had become a well-oiled machine of grocery lists, PTA meetings, and, hey, did you pay the internet bill? The romance had fizzled out somewhere between Jake's birth and our third, we should try counseling talk that we never actually followed through on. But still, I thought we were fine. Not perfect, but fine. Like an old pair of sneakers, worn out, kind of smelly, but comfortable. Then, the sink clogged. A normal person might have seen this as an inconvenience. A minor annoyance in the grand scheme of life. Not me. No, sir. Looking back, I realized that the clogged sink was the start of my downfall. We called a plumber, a guy named Rich. Yeah, Rich. Great name, right? Classic. I should have known from the moment he walked in, all confident and chatty, that something was off. He wasn't just fixing the sink. He was making conversation. Friendly, easygoing, cracking jokes like he'd been to our house 100 times before. And Karen? Oh, she was laughing. Not the polite, you're a service worker, and I have to acknowledge your existence kind of laugh. No, this was the laugh. The one she used to have with me back when we were still in that annoying, can't keep our hands off each other phase. At first, I chalked it up to her being nice. Karen's always been friendly. But then, as Rich worked, I started noticing little things. Like how she leaned on the counter, head tilted, that interested look on her face. Or how she asked him questions that had absolutely nothing to do with plumbing. Or, my personal favorite, how she touched her hair every 5 seconds like she was in a shampoo commercial. Listen, I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I know when my wife is flirting. Still, I didn't say anything. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Then, a few days later, the sink clogged again. Now, call me crazy, but in all my years of existence, I've never known a professionally repaired sink to break in the exact same way within 4 days. That's when my brain went from maybe I'm imagining things to, okay, what the heck is going on? So, like any rational adult, I decided to test a theory. I left for work, kissed Karen goodbye, and then circled the block like some sort of low-budget detective. 10 minutes later, guess who showed up? Rich. Again. No toolbox. No work van. Just him, in his very not plumber-like jeans and t-shirt, sauntering up to my house like he owned the place. Now, I know what you're thinking. Thomas, maybe he was checking on his work. Sure. And maybe I'm secretly a billionaire, but I just choose to drive a used Honda. At this point, I had a choice. I could go home, kick down the door, and turn into the guy on every reality TV show ever. Or I could wait, gather intel, play it smart. So, I waited. An hour later, Rich left. No tools. No explanation. Just a satisfied little strut that made me want to introduce his face to the sidewalk. And Karen? She texted me. Hey, how's your day going? Love you. Oh, that's how we're playing this. Now, I could have confronted her right then. But something in me needed more. More proof. More everything. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I played along. And that, my friends, is how I found out just how deep this rabbit hole went. You ever have one of those moments where you're staring at something completely normal, and your brain just starts playing connect the dots with stuff that doesn't seem related at all? Yeah, that was me the next morning, sitting at the kitchen table, watching Karen pour cereal for Jake like she wasn't secretly starring in a low-budget drama behind my back. Jake, our 7-year-old, was busy talking about some kid at school who had thrown up during lunch, and Karen was nodding along like she was deeply invested in this groundbreaking news. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, drinking my coffee, thinking about how a plumber had walked into my house twice in the same week with nothing but a charming smile and apparently no need for actual plumbing equipment. Now, I could have let it go. I could have just gone on with my life, pretended I didn't see what I saw, and convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, Rich the plumber had taken a sudden interest in checking the structural integrity of my marriage. But no, that wasn't going to happen. I needed proof, and I needed a plan. So, I did what any completely rational husband would do. I took the day off work, pretended to leave like normal, and then parked my car around the corner, sitting there like an absolute lunatic. An hour passed. Nothing. 2 hours. Still nothing. By the third hour, I was starting to feel like a fool. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was turning into one of those paranoid guys who sees conspiracies in everything. Maybe I just wasted an entire morning staking out my own house like I was investigating myself for a crime I hadn't even committed. And then, right when I was about to give up, my patience paid off. Karen left. She wasn't dressed up or anything special. Just jeans and a sweatshirt. But here's the thing, Karen never just went out on weekdays unless it was for groceries, errands, or something equally boring. And today? No mention of any plans. I followed. Now, before you judge me, let's be clear. I wasn't planning on doing anything crazy. I just wanted to know where she was going. And if it turned out to be Target or the dry cleaner, fine. I'd accept my defeat and go home with my dignity mostly intact. Spoiler alert, it wasn't Target. Karen drove across town, past the usual spots, and pulled into a parking lot outside this nondescript building with tinted windows and absolutely no signage. I squinted at it from my car. It didn't look like a restaurant, or a gym, or a nail salon. It looked like the kind of place where you needed a secret password to get in. And then she walked inside. I sat there, staring at the building like it was going to tell me all its secrets if I glared hard enough. 5 minutes passed. 10. My brain was running through every possible scenario. Maybe it was a doctor's office. Maybe she had joined a cult. Maybe. And then a car pulled in next to me. I glanced over, and my stomach did this weird little flip. Because guess who had just arrived? Rich. The plumber. With the confidence of a man who had absolutely no reason to worry about being seen, he got out of his car and walked inside the same building Karen had just entered. Well, that was interesting. At this point, I had two options. I could either go home and stew in my own thoughts like a fool, or I could do the one thing I had sworn to myself I would never do, go inside and see for myself. So, naturally, I got out of my car and walked straight in. Now, here's the thing about sneaking into a place where you probably don't belong. You have to act like you do. If you hesitate, if you look around too much, if you act like you're trying to figure out where you are, people notice. So I walked in like I had a meeting scheduled, like I had every right to be there, like I wasn't about to uncover whatever nonsense was happening behind these tinted windows. The inside of the building was weird. Not fancy. Not run down. Just weird. Dim lighting, modern furniture, a receptionist at a desk who barely looked up when I entered. I walked past her like I knew exactly where I was going, which was nowhere in particular, and then I heard it. Karen's voice. She was in one of the rooms. Laughing. Chatting. Sounding way too comfortable for someone who hadn't even mentioned she'd be out today. I followed the sound, stopping just outside the slightly ajar door. And then, because I clearly have no sense of self-preservation, I peeked inside. And that's when I realized I had been completely unprepared for what I was about to see. Inside the room, Karen was sitting across from Rich, both of them looking at some kind of paperwork. And in the middle of the table, like the world's most casual betrayal, was a contract. A contract? Rich, the plumber, was apparently not just a plumber. He was a real estate agent. Karen was buying a house. Without me. Now, I don't know what kind of emotions most people experience when they realize their spouse is making major life decisions behind their back. But for me, it went something like this. Confusion. Shock. The overwhelming urge to laugh at the absurdity of it all. I mean, really? A house? That's what this was about? I was out here thinking I was about to catch her in some dramatic affair, and instead, she was just casually making real estate transactions without even mentioning it to me? And here's the best part. She was looking excited. She and Rich were going through the paperwork like this was the most natural thing in the world. Like she wasn't technically married to someone who should probably be involved in a major purchase like this. I backed away from the door, my brain still trying to process everything. Now, I had a whole new set of questions. Why was Karen buying a house? Why was Rich involved? And most importantly, who, exactly, was going to be living in it? Because I had a feeling the answer wasn't me. I stood there in the dimly lit hallway of that suspiciously quiet real estate office, staring at Karen and Rich like I had accidentally wandered into someone else's life. A house. My wife, my legally bound partner in mortgage payments, was out here picking out new real estate like it was a casual Tuesday errand. You know that feeling when you realize you've been left out of an important conversation? Multiply that by about 1,000 and throw in a side of betrayal with a garnish of what in the actual world is happening. Karen was flipping through paperwork like she was deciding between tile or hardwood, while Rich, the ever-so-helpful plumber, turns out he's not just a plumber, pointed at documents with the kind of confidence that suggested he was very familiar with this process, probably because he had done it before, possibly with other people's wives. And the most ridiculous part? Karen looked happy. Not, "I found a $20 bill in my winter coat," happy. This was glowing happy. The kind of happy that made me realize she had been unhappy for a long time, just not unhappy enough to actually say anything to me about it. I should have walked in right then and asked, "Hey, Karen, who exactly were you planning on moving into this new house with? Just checking before I go home and stare at our very much still in my name mortgage." But I didn't. No, I stood there like an unpaid extra in my own disaster movie, watching the scene unfold. Then, just when I thought my day had hit its peak weirdness, Karen pulled out a folder. A thick one. The kind that suggested this wasn't some impulsive, "Oh, I saw a cute house, so why not" decision. This had planning behind it. Now, I'm not a genius, but I do know one thing. When your wife starts making secret plans that involve real estate, and those plans do not include you, there's a very, very slim chance that she's throwing you a surprise party. At that point, I had to make a decision. Walk in and confront her like a reasonable adult? Or walk away and figure out my next move with a clear head? Obviously, I did the worst possible thing. I went home and acted normal. Karen got back about an hour after me, breezing through the door with that "just had a productive day" energy. She gave me a kiss on the cheek. I had just watched her plan an entire new life without me, and she had the audacity to kiss me on the cheek like I was a coworker she bumped into at the break room. "Hey," she said casually, setting her purse down. "How was your day?" "Oh, just great. Spent the morning considering if I've actually been married or if I'm just an extended roommate who helps pay for utilities." I went with, "Fine. You?" "Busy," she said, stretching. "Meetings all day. Just exhausting." "Meetings?" "Sure. Real estate meetings without me." Jake ran into the room, completely oblivious to the fact that his mother was apparently planning on relocating our family somewhere else. Dad, guess what? Please tell me you overheard Mom on the phone saying, "I can't wait to move in with my new plumber husband." Instead, he hit me with, "We made volcanoes in class, and mine exploded the biggest." So, no secret intel from my 7-year-old informant. Noted. Dinner went on as usual, except for the small detail that I was watching Karen like I was waiting for her to slip up and say, "So anyway, we close on the new house next week." But nothing. Not a single mention of her big, life-changing purchase. I had a lot of questions. Why was she buying a house? Who was actually going to live in it? And the biggest one, when exactly was she planning on telling me? By the time we got to bedtime, Karen had no clue that I knew anything. She kissed Jake goodnight, brushed her teeth, and climbed into bed next to me like everything was fine. I couldn't take it anymore. "Hey," I said casually, staring at the ceiling. "You ever think about moving?" Karen rolled over to look at me. "Moving? Yeah, getting a new place. Different neighborhood, maybe?" She made a weird face, like I had just asked if we should start collecting antique spoons. "Not really." "Why? Not really?" This woman had a folder filled with plans. Plans that did not include me. I turned my head to look at her, forcing a casual smile. "I don't know. Just seems like the kind of thing people should talk about before making any big decisions, Karen blinked at me for a second. "Are you feeling okay?" "Oh, I am absolutely feeling something." "Yeah," I said, forcing a yawn. "Just wondering." She shrugged. "I like her house. But if we ever decide to move, we can talk about it." "If we ever decide to move." She said it, with a straight face. This was full-on deception mode. I needed more. I needed to know how far this went. So the next morning, I did what any sane person would do. I took her car. Now, normally, I wouldn't have even thought about it, but Karen had taken my car to get serviced the week before, so I figured I owed her one. I dropped Jake off at school, pulled into a gas station, and took a look around her car. I wasn't looking for anything specific, but I found an envelope shoved under the passenger seat. It was a list. Addresses. A handful of them, all with different price points next to them. I wasn't looking at just one house. Karen was shopping around. I put the envelope back exactly where I found it, sat there in the driver's seat for a good 5 minutes, and processed my new reality. My wife wasn't just planning to move. She was planning options, which meant one thing. She was planning for a future that didn't include me. So, to recap, my wife was secretly house hunting without me, Her friendly neighborhood plumber was somehow involved, and she was playing fool like our life together wasn't teetering on the edge of a cliff. Now, a rational man might have confronted her right then and there, sat her down, pulled out the list of addresses, and said, "Hey, Karen, want to explain why you're making real estate decisions like a single woman?" But see, I wasn't in the mood for rational. Rational was for people whose wives weren't trying to replace them like an outdated kitchen appliance. I needed more. And I needed payback. But not the usual, boring kind. No draining the bank account. No tipping off her boss. No public meltdown where I flip over a dining table. No, Karen deserved something better. Step 1. I needed one more piece of evidence. That's how I found myself in our own house, playing the worst game of detective ever. I wasn't about to go through her phone, that was amateur hour. Instead, I went for something she would never think to hide, her planner. Karen, for all her modern, tech-savvy ways, still wrote things down. She had one of those fancy leather planners she carried around like it held the nuclear codes, full of schedules, to-do lists, and little notes about who owed her a lunch date. I found it in her work bag, right there, in plain sight, as if she had never considered I might start snooping. Flipping through the pages, I wasn't exactly sure what I was looking for. Then, right there, 2 weeks ago, written in her neat handwriting, was a little note. Meeting at Ridgeway. Confirm details with R. Ridgeway. One of the addresses on her secret list. And R? Oh, come on. I'd have to be legally brain dead to not figure that one out. Rich. Karen and Rich had been meeting before I even knew about this house nonsense. And if they were meeting at one of the locations, that meant she wasn't just thinking about moving. She was already in the process. I sat there for a moment, staring at her planner, feeling that wonderful mix of rage and amusement that only a betrayed husband can experience. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. This was months in the making. I put the planner back exactly how I found it. Then, I did what any mature, intelligent, and level-headed man would do. I decided to make her life as inconvenient as humanly possible. Step 2. The Karen experience. Now, I don't claim to be the smartest man alive, but I do know one thing: Karen thrives on control. She likes things a certain way. She likes order. She likes her life to run smoothly. And most importantly, she does not like surprises. So I gave her some. The first one came the next morning when she tried to log into her work laptop and found that the Wi-Fi mysteriously wasn't working. "Oh, great," she muttered, clicking through settings. "Did you mess with the router?" "Nope," I said, sipping my coffee. Maybe Jake was playing with the cables. Jake, who was at the table coloring a picture of what looked like a spaceship crashing into a tree, glanced up. I didn't touch anything. Karen sighed and restarted the laptop. "I swear, nothing ever works in this house." "Exactly, Karen. Exactly." That afternoon, she tried to print something, and, oh no, the printer was mysteriously out of ink. It had been working just fine yesterday, but today? Completely dry. That night, she went to take a shower, and oops, all the good towels were mysteriously gone. Instead, I had replaced them with the scratchy old ones we kept in the back of the closet. Day by day, little things kept going wrong. Her favorite coffee mug? Suddenly missing. The thermostat? Somehow locked at 75 degrees, making the house just a little too warm for comfort. Her car? Well, funny thing, I may have accidentally switched our car keys, forcing her to take my old truck to work instead of her perfectly polished sedan. "Oh my God, Thomas, why does your truck smell like gasoline?" "It's a truck, Karen. Trucks smell like trucks." The beauty of it all? She never suspected a thing. She thought it was bad luck. A weird week. A string of unfortunate events. And I was having the time of my life. But this was only the beginning. Because next came step 3, a friendly reminder. See, Karen was making plans like I was already gone. But the thing is, I wasn't. So I started reminding her. Little things, here and there. Like setting my keys right next to hers so she couldn't forget they were still our keys. Or updating our family calendar and writing down date night, Thomas and Karen, just to see if she'd flinch. Or casually mentioning, "Hey, we should probably start thinking about summer vacation plans," just to see her try to pretend like she hadn't already booked a future without me. And the best part? She couldn't do anything about it. She had to play along. Because she wasn't ready to tell me yet. She wasn't ready to admit it. And I wasn't going to make it easy for her. But the real fun was yet to come. Because if Karen wanted to pretend like everything was fine, then I was going to make sure she had to live with it. At this point, Karen was probably one minor inconvenience away from losing it. The Wi-Fi issues, the thermostat that refused to budge from an uncomfortable 75 degrees, the sudden disappearance of her favorite coffee mug. It was all piling up in her perfectly organized little world. And let me tell you, watching her try to maintain composure while slowly unraveling was chef's kiss. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because while she was tiptoeing around the fact that she was actively plotting a house-hunting betrayal, I still had one goal left to accomplish. Make her regret every single moment of this mess before she even got the chance to leave. See, Karen wasn't just planning to move. That much was obvious. She was preparing for a future where I wasn't included. The house wasn't just about real estate. It was an exit strategy. A slow, methodical transition into a new life where I was an inconvenient afterthought. And yet, here she was, pretending like nothing was happening. So, I decided to return the favor. And by return the favor, I mean I made it impossible for her to enjoy the fantasy of her secret new life while still living in mine. Step 1. The social overload. Karen loved control. She liked her schedule. She liked plans. And more than anything, she hated last-minute social obligations. She needed time to prepare, time to plan outfits, time to mentally rehearse conversations so she could present herself exactly the way she wanted. Which is exactly why I started inviting people over. Unannounced. Oh, babe, I totally forgot to tell you. Mike and Ashley are stopping by for dinner tonight. Oh, yeah. Jake's teacher asked if parents wanted to get together for a little informal meeting. I said yes. They'll be here in an hour. Oh, Karen, you won't believe who I ran into. Your cousin Melissa. I told her we'd love to have her over this weekend. She said she'd bring wine. She could not say no without looking suspicious. She had to smile. She had to act like this wasn't slowly killing her inside. And I milked it for all it was worth. Karen, stuck playing the role of the devoted wife, had to sit there and nod along as I enthusiastically told our guests about all the fun plans Karen and I were making for the future. Our anniversary is coming up, I'd say casually, watching her eye twitch ever so slightly. Thinking of planning something big this year. Oh, you know, Karen and I have been talking about renovating the house instead of moving. We really want to make this place feel fresh again. Every time, I could see her fingers tighten around whatever she was holding, a fork, a wine glass, the nearest object she could legally clutch without committing a crime. Step 2. The public affection nightmare. Karen and I had settled into that comfortable, barely touching stage of marriage where casual affection had been reduced to mandatory birthday kisses and occasional side hugs in front of Jake. So imagine her horror when I suddenly became the world's most affectionate husband. Holding her hand while we walked into stores? Done. A casual arm around her shoulder at social events? Absolutely. Calling her babe and honey loud enough for people to hear? Why not? She couldn't pull away without looking like a heartless monster. She couldn't reject me without making people wonder what was wrong. And she hated every second of it. The first time I kissed her forehead in front of our neighbors, she flinched like I had electrocuted her. The best part? She couldn't call me out on it because I wasn't doing anything wrong. Step 3. The grand finale. Now, all of this was good fun, but I still needed something big. Something that would make Karen's little secret plans blow up in her face before she even got the chance to execute them. And then, I found the key. One night, when she was asleep, I grabbed her planner again. And there it was, a date. A final meeting at the house. With Rich. She wasn't just looking anymore. She was finalizing. So I did what any loving, devoted husband would do. I made sure she wasn't alone. The day of the meeting, I told Karen I had some errands to run. Might take a while, I said, acting casual. Jake and I will be out most of the afternoon. Okay, she said, barely looking up. Perfect. I dropped Jake off with my sister for the day. Then, I called a few people. People who, under normal circumstances, wouldn't expect to be invited to a real estate deal. People like Karen's parents. And her best friend. And just for fun, a couple from our neighborhood who were always talking about how much they admired our perfect marriage. Hey, I told them all, Karen and I are looking at a house today, and she really wants some outside opinions. Thought it'd be fun if we surprised her with a little support. And because Karen had never told them otherwise, they all agreed to come. Now, I wish I could have been there to see the moment Karen and Rich walked into that house, expecting privacy, only to find a small gathering of loved ones, cheerfully waiting. But unfortunately, I was too busy being several blocks away, parked in my car, laughing until I cried. The text from Karen came exactly 10 minutes later. Karen, what did you do? Oh, Honey, what did you do? I let her sit in the disaster she created for about an hour before I strolled into the house like nothing was wrong. Oh wow, this place is great, I said, looking around like I was seeing it for the first time. Hey, Rich. Didn't expect to see you here. He looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Karen looked like she was actively reconsidering every life choice. Karen didn't even tell me she was this serious about moving. I added, grinning at everyone. Babe, this is such a big decision. We should really talk about it as a family. And just like that, her secret plans were dead. Because you can't sneak away when your entire social circle now knows about the house. She had to pretend that she and I were making this decision together. And just like that, Karen's new life without me fell apart before it even began. There are certain moments in life when you get to watch karma work in real time. That day at the house? That was one of them. Karen had spent months crafting her little escape plan. The house, the secrecy, her new life just waiting in the wings. And then, in a single afternoon, it had all collapsed in front of an audience. And that was the best part. Because she couldn't react. She had to stand there, smile plastered on her face, pretending like this was fine, like this was exactly how she had planned it. Oh, Karen, her mother gushed, looking around the house. You didn't tell us you and Thomas were looking at new places. How exciting. Karen's face could have been used as a national warning sign for suppressed rage. Yeah, I said, acting like a supportive husband. I was just as surprised as you all. I had no idea she'd been working so hard behind the scenes. Karen let out a strangled laugh, which I assume was her way of keeping herself from punching me in the throat. Rich, the home-wrecking plumber turned realtor, looked like he had several regrets. Karen's best friend nudged her. Why didn't you tell me about this? We could have been planning together. Because she wasn't planning with me, genius. Karen waved a hand like this was all a funny misunderstanding. Oh, it's just, preliminary. Preliminary? I had seen the contracts. Oh, babe, I said, grinning. You told me you were just thinking about moving. But it looks like you're way ahead of me. I could practically hear her teeth grinding. We walked through the house, all together, every single person Karen had never wanted involved. Her parents commenting on the space, her best friend asking where the family photos would go, and me? I just played the doting husband, nodding along, pretending like I hadn't orchestrated the entire thing. Rich was sweating bullets, and rightfully so. He kept shifting uncomfortably, probably calculating how much distance he needed to put between himself and whatever disaster he had just stepped into. Then came my favorite moment of the day. Karen's dad, a former cop, clapped a hand on Rich's shoulder. So, Rich, how do you two know each other? Rich froze. Karen froze. I watched in pure, unfiltered joy. Rich cleared his throat. Well, Karen and I, we met through. Karen jumped in faster than I've ever seen her move in my life. Oh, Rich helped us when we had that plumbing issue, remember? She blurted, talking way too fast. And he mentioned he was in real estate. And I just thought, why not ask him for some advice? Her father nodded slowly. That's funny. Karen held her breath. Because I remember Thomas mentioning that he already knew a real estate agent. Oh, this was beautiful. Rich smiled awkwardly. Right. Well, options. Karen looked ready to detonate. And that's when I decided to twist the knife. I clapped my hands together, looking at Karen like I just had the greatest idea of all time. You know what? We should all make a day out of this. Look at a few houses together. Make it a family event. Karen turned to me, I screaming murder. Oh, babe, I added with a smirk. Since you've already been looking, you probably have a whole list ready, right? Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. And that's when it happened. Karen broke. She let out a weird, strangled laugh and said, actually, I, need a moment. I'll be right back. And then, she grabbed my arm in a death grip and yanked me out of the room. Here we go. We ended up in the guest bathroom of a house that neither of us would ever be living in, and Karen shut the door behind us with the force of a woman on the verge of a complete psychological breakdown. What? She hissed. Do you think you're doing? I smiled. Oh, just supporting my wife. Karen's eyes flashed. Are you trying to humiliate me? Karen, I don't have to try. She inhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of her nose. You have no idea what's going on. Oh, really? I crossed my arms. So, enlighten me. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Nothing. Because what was she going to say? That she was planning to leave, but now I had made that impossible? I leaned in, lowering my voice. You were never going to tell me, were you? Her silence was all the answer I needed. That was it. That was the moment. I saw the realization flicker in her eyes, the realization that I had taken everything she had been building and crushed it. Her secret? Dead. Her new life? Ruined. Her exit plan? Gone. She had to stay. Because now, everyone thought we were making this decision together. And that was the true revenge. Not some dramatic outburst. Not storming out. No. I made her live in the mess she created. I forced her to keep pretending. And for the next 2 months, I watched as Karen, trapped in her own deception, tried to salvage what was left of her now inescapable life. She went through the motions, acted like she was happy, played the role she had no choice but to play. But I saw it. I saw the resentment, the frustration, the realization that she was stuck. Because she wasn't leaving, and I wasn't letting her go easy. Then, one day, 2 months later, I came home, and she was gone. Not just out running errands, gone. Completely gone. No note. No warning. Just an empty closet and a missing suitcase. She had finally cracked. Finally made her escape. And the best part? She had to do it in the worst, most humiliating way possible, running away in the middle of the night like some kind of petty criminal. Because she couldn't face me. Because I had one. And so I did exactly what I had planned to do all along. I moved on. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel